let me just talk about first about the body. Man is body. Basically, this is a shell, is it not? So when people say, oh, Billy Graham died, what did he say? Don't tell people I died, I just began. Because the shell is buried and goes back dust to dust, ashes to ashes. The old saying that happens at many funerals is so true because it goes back. The shell goes back to where it was created, back to the ground. But the soul nature of man continues to live on. So this is why this area, I believe, is so important. And this is why, well, let me talk about here. The body. Okay, I'm trying to bring my rabbit trails into submission. The body, when we talk about the doctrine of man, the body, there are two extremes we need to avoid. The first extreme is too much emphasis on it, right? Paul said bodily exercise profits you little. Spiritual things are what's important. And people put too much emphasis on that. I can fall in that category, as can many people, right? Too much emphasis, too much emphasis. Well, as we all know, what's the other extreme? Zero emphasis. It doesn't matter. It's all about spiritual things, brother. Well, that's great, but for 80 years, I've got this shell that I've got to do the spiritual things in. So why would we neglect one or the other? So we live in a body, and God renewed my passion in this area. For example, I've talked about this before, but I feel it's important to say it again. If we allow, say, addictions to control our attitude and productivity, will it hinder what we do for God? Yes, it will. When we're always dealing with stress, anxiety, and sickness, can we do much for God? So I believe personally that one of the ways the enemy attacks us is in our body. Because no matter what you believe, I think we can all agree that as a child of God, the enemy is going to go after our productivity. He could care less if you come to church on Sunday, you sit here, you hear this, you go home, you have lunch, you put on the television, and that's your weekly routine. You never touch a person for Christ. You never witness. You never lead anybody to the Lord. You never go out and serve. You don't do anything. You're off the hit list. He's got you right where he wants you because you're not productive. It's the productive Christians that he's after. So why wouldn't he go after our productivity? Go after us in this area and stop us silencing the voice. Yes, he can do it from death, but he can also do it from making the body in an inactive state. So let me talk about this for a minute. Does your mood affect productivity and quality of life? Does your mood affect productivity and quality of life? How you feel, right? I don't feel like going to church. Sound familiar? I hope the 11 a.m. is more honest, because I know many of us go through, I don't feel like going to church. I don't feel like going to the Wednesday night study. I don't feel like going to the hospital homes and ministering to people. I don't feel like witnessing to Christ in the store. I don't feel like talking to my neighbor who probably doesn't know the Lord. I don't feel like. Do you ever wonder how many things we don't do for the Lord because of that? We don't feel like it, and we won't do it. Well, what do you feel like? I feel like a big lunch and some NASCAR. Well, wonderful. That will be very productive for the Lord. Now, again, not knocking lunch and NASCAR, right? It's all about priorities. Priorities. Think about this. Okay, now since we're talking about the body, have you heard of serotonin, dopamine, glutamate, and noradrenaline? You've heard of all those, right? Do you know what they are? They are God-given chemicals given to you to allow you to experience life. They're God-given. God gave us these things. Serotonin, relaxing. Does anybody want to relax or sleep well? What about dopamine? Pleasure. Pleasure, glutamate, taking away the cognitive behavioral and the right thinking. Noradrenaline, how we handle stress. See, if he just took all of these away, you would sit here like a corpse. You would have no emotion, no relaxation, nothing. So these things affect the body. So when you don't feel like it, many times that has to do with how we're taking care of the body. It's always goes together. Now, obviously, there are those on the mission field. The movie we watched last night, I have a feeling they could care less about what I'm talking about because they're just trying to survive, right? Obviously. But there are most of us, when we're given this gift from God to steward it correctly, it will affect many areas of life. Many areas of life. So the doctrine of man, the body, we can't always blame and attack on the enemy. Right? I haven't felt like going to church all week. I haven't felt like serving. That enemy is on me. Maybe, but it could be within. The Puritans used to say the greatest enemy we have is within. We're all worried about the devil, but I'm worried about the devil within. So this area of body, basically it's how you live for Christ. The spirit, the soul works through your body. And how we're a representative of Christ. Sin is passed down. Sin is passed down. It is. The Adamic nature, the sin of the father, is passed down. But the curse on us is broken when a person believes. So I don't believe a Christian has to deal with and say, oh, generational curses, my grandfather, my dad. However, I do believe that there's a propensity to sin in that area. Is there not? Often what your father struggled with or your mother struggled with, do we struggle with the same things? It's often passed down. Sometimes it's not. I mean, a person will see a terrible alcoholic in their father and say, I'm never touching alcohol. And they do fine. But how do we know if that drink isn't taken, that trigger begins in that DNA, and they're going in that direction of the sins of their parents? And it's not just sin. Here's what I want to talk about for a minute. And it's not just sin, but everything identified with the fall, such as disease, can be passed down as well. Have you ever heard this? Do you have a family history of? Oh, I bet you have, right? Do you have a family history of? So, to answer the question, is there a curse that's being passed down from Adam? Absolutely. What's the point of the cross? But Christians shouldn't get all worked up in this and say, oh, it's a generational curse. I got to keep breaking. I got to keep breaking. It might be a stronghold in your life. It might be a predisposition to sin in this area, but you're not cursed of God. The Adamic nature has been passed down, but as a believer, you don't have to come. I've seen so many Christians, but Shane, I think it's my generational curse. I have to live with this. No, you don't. Now, there could be a struggle. It's going to be difficult, right? And here's what I want to do. I told you last week I was going to bring in a little bit more sometimes of physical, because I think the body, soul, and spirit are connected. I'm going to give you a personal example, something I've had to struggle with for quite a while, and I've heard from people and doctors and different things. There's a pattern in my family of heart disease. And that's, of course, been on my mind, right, as a little kid, seeing it take my grandparents, my father, and those close to me. I remember my dad actually died of a heart attack on 35th East out by Lancaster Baptist. My grandfather over by the new library on M2 by 50th. And my grandma on Avenue N ran her car off the road, died of a heart attack. So is that predisposition there? Is that... Now here's the thing. You don't worry about it. You're like, oh my goodness. And doctors say, you know what, Shane, you got to really watch this area. Yeah, no kidding. And it's funny, that's what cracks me up and my wife sometimes. But people think, oh, Shane, he's so healthy, he'll live to be 100. No, I'm not. I kept Taco Bell in business for 10 years. You know what hydraulic fluid is that you put in tractors? I used to put down my skin as tanning oil when I was 18, 19 because it worked really good. I drank more alcohol than most sailors. So this is just, you know, God's just sustaining here. I don't know what the future holds, so it just cracks me up. But I do know that He's called me back to be a better steward of the gift, what we talked about before. But so this runs in the family pattern. It's there. So I believe I'm called to use wisdom. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. Okay, enemy, I think I can see where this might be an open door, so I need to use caution here. I need to use wisdom. I can't relate to the person who struggles sometimes with something else. So what does all this mean? Well, recently I did a blood work again, and it was, the doctor said, hey, Shane, there's high High LDL levels you need to watch out for. Have you heard that before? Cholesterol, LDL levels. LDL is low-density lipoproteins. It's basically where the fat and the protein molecules bind together in the blood. So a high LDL, which is a high low-density lipoproteins are in my blood, what those do is they actually go and they can stick to the arteries in the blood vessels, and they form narrowing of the arteries, hence what happens? Heart attack, right? So I'm thinking, oh, that's great news because it just lines up with exactly what I've been, people have told me. Now, the funny thing is, which it's called bad cholesterol, right? Bad cholesterol. Now, I don't think I could spend 20 minutes on the importance of cholesterol. There's not bad cholesterol. What happens is there's bad food that we consume that causes the blood vessels to break and arteries to break and tear and rip. It's called inflammation. So the more we do this, the more the high-density lipids need to go and protect that area. So is it those that are causing the damage or the food that's causing the damage? See, so you have to use wisdom here. And then the HDL, the high-density lipids, what are known as the good guy, supposedly go and they pull those away from the arteries to help clean that area. So this is just an area I have to use wisdom in, have to use caution in. But did God mess up? Why isn't it called bad food instead of bad cholesterol? Because that's how it works. And there's something you'll probably hear often, oxidation, or oxidative stress. Have you heard that term lately? Oxidative stress. Free radicals, right? All these things, what they mean is the bad guys are winning. The body is in such a toxic state that now it's being, these free radicals are being released, damage is being done to the body. And this damage is done to the heart, to the arteries and different things. The cholesterol and different things goes and it begins to help and repair those areas. So in a nutshell, this is an area where I want to use wisdom and I want to help in this area. I want to look to God as wisdom, for wisdom and strength. And this is why actually there's a big debate out there. Who do you believe? Forks over knives or the meat and dairy? Right? Who do you believe? What's going on here? And so that's why you'll see a debate in this area. And there are major negative effects of low cholesterol as well. I'm not going to get into that. I just want to show you how a personal example of the fall being passed down from parents and something that now I am predispositioned to possibly struggle with or be an area where there should be a little bit of wisdom. But again, we don't lose sleep over it if God chooses to do what he does. But I believe, and this is where I step on toes, I believe that we are called to steward our bodies better than what we are. I'm going to make a dramatic statement here, but why is this so important? Why is this so important, Shane? Because the majority of health issues that we are praying for are self-created. I'm convinced of that. Now, the people upset at that statement will say, he said all. No. All is A-L-L. Not all. The majority. The majority. Who are you looking to get wisdom? For example, this is where I get so mad sometimes. But people, they go in and the doctor says, here's a statin drug. They should say, tell me about your lifestyle. Right? Because the statin drug goes in, tells the liver to stop producing cholesterol. Not good. Not good. And to add insult to injury, let me read, since you probably don't believe what I'm saying maybe. The Mayo Clinic and Harvard Medical School I've been reading said the statins can cause severe muscle pain, liver damage, kidney failure, and death. I might just deal with high cholesterol, right? I mean, what? So you see, anytime you begin to alter and twist what God has done, where are you getting your information from? Yes, there's a time and a place for it. Of course, we're not naive. But many times we are responsible for our health condition. And also, this is a $26 billion a year industry. Did you catch that? Just on statins. $26 billion a year industry. So where are we getting information from? We're going to stop the liver's production of good cholesterol, what God has ordained, and we're going to continue down a destructive lifestyle and eat a bunch of garbage and not take care of our body and then go and take something that causes more damage. It makes no sense because we're not going to God for wisdom in these areas. Now again, people will say, are you against it? No, I'm not. But you should ask, am I creating this? Am I creating this? Because if you're creating it, you can often stop it with God's help. Again, we don't put all this emphasis on the body. But how many people out there are unproductive for God because they're not stewarding this wonderful gift He's given? That's the bottom line. What kind of example for our children? What kind of heritage are we leaving? What kind of legacy are we leaving? Yes, this is convicting. It's convicting so we make change.